Oh, hello, I'm Madonna Clarkson, and this is Back in Time. Today we will be focusing on the transatlantic slave trade, where Africa and Europe's future will be determined forever. Firstly, we go to Felicity News, where we will take a closer look at the views of individuals and groups concerning the transatlantic slave trade.
Hi, Felicity News reporting from 200 years ago, where the debate on the transatlantic slave trade is sure heating up. Food has been thrown, blood spilled, and opinions made clear. Let's take a closer look.
This is too ridiculous. These are people we are talking about. Real people that God created. God made them equal, and you are not a true follower of God if you don't look to them as your equal.
Hey now, calm down. Don't start denying my faith. I'm just a middle-class man. The truth is, Britain needs a slave trade because it keeps our economy good and our citizens healthy.
Yeah!
He's the head of the sugar and tobacco company. He's only saying that because all his wealth comes from selling people.
They're not even people. They're slaves.
Yeah!
It's one man's burden, really.
I was working them to death, helping them.
Yeah, Africa was a rich and great continent before you came along and ruined it.
Who are you to deny Britain of its wealth? Are you saying that Africa is more important than your own country?
I've been as well before, sir, and you are a crook and a liar.
Well, they sure have some issues to work through. To make your voice heard, go to www.myvoicecounts.com. Good night.
I'm Marissa Bright, and this is Back in Time, Here and When. When, the mid-15th century in the times of the transatlantic slave trade. Our team here has been documenting the progress of some of the ships that are trading slaves across the Atlantic Ocean from Africa to America and Europe. Here with me now is one of the slaves themselves, Aid Amidi. So, Aid, tell me about how you got from Africa to America.
Well, we were just all in the fields, cutting, collecting our harvest, when suddenly the children started screaming at us to run. Some of our merchants had come to take us on a 1-month journey across the Atlantic Ocean to North and South America to be sold as slaves, something to do with us being savages or something. So we were marched on for weeks on end to a slave castle. As much as 15% of us died before we even make it to the confinement. Then we were packed on the ships with just enough room to lie down and shipped away from home. Even some of the children were caught, along with millions of men and women.
That sounds absolutely awful. What were the conditions like on the ships?
Well, if you didn't die of sickness, then you were forced to lie in each other's urine, vomit, and goodness knows what else. Many suffered from malnutrition or the effects of the mistreatment at the confinement camps.
Sounds horrific. Well, thank you for coming in and seeing us today, Aid.
No problem. Now, can someone help me get these chains off?
Hello, I'm Debbie, and today with my partner Diggs Lyons, we'll be reporting on the changes of attitude towards the slaves of Africa and the ongoing relevance in society. So, Dick, tell me, how did the attitude towards the slaves change?
Well, Debbie, let's have a look at this fish.
Okay.
Japanese fine fish is making money from the salmon being eaten. Suddenly, the Japanese fighting fish's descendants realised that, hey, the salmon was a fish too. They began rallying. They rallied with all types of fish to make that Japanese fighting fish stop abusing their salmon. The Japanese fighting fish stopped, but the salmon, from all those years of being eaten, was still put down and treated as food.
Exactly what happened with the slave trade. The public, specifically women, realised that the Africans were human too. They wanted to abolish all slavery, but they thought the best first step was to abolish the slave trade.
Like the fish, it took a while. In 1787, a society called the Society for Effecting the Abolition of the Slave Trade began. But unfortunately, human trafficking continued between the Caribbean islands until 1811. Then, finally, on the 25th of March 1807, the slave trade was abolished, though the law did not fully take place until 1823.
Why not?
Well, you see, those traders, those nasty traders, were not very happy with the law, because that would mean all their free labour would be gone. So the government allowed them to have an extra 6 years of free labour.
Wowee.
Hey, you said women were involved. How so?
Well, many white women like Mary Brickett, Hannah More and Mary Wollstonecraft opposed very strongly against the slave trade, and 10% of the year,
Yeah, the year, 17, yeah.
1787 to 1788, subscribers to the Abolition Society were women.
Oh yeah, I remember hearing about that. They began campaigning because most of the public didn't know where their sugar and cotton came from. So when the public were educated, they straight away opposed its origins.
Slowly, and with the persistence of the campaigners and society members, it was abolished.
Now to the ongoing relevance. Run back, look.
My bum's wet.
Oh yeah.
So, what was the ongoing relevance?
Back to the fish metaphor. Our little fishy over there. The Japanese finding fish still put down that salmon for being eaten. This applies to today. Continually, people from all different origins are made fun of and teased just for being different.
That's not cool.
Like us bogans.
Yes.
Anyway, more than that, Africa's poverty can be partly traced back to the Atlantic slave trade. In the slave trade, Africa lost millions of its population, their economic and their political independence.
Oh, God. It is also the reason for the European current advances and success in contrast to Africa.
Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Good night and goodbye. Tired of paying your workers? Are you annoyed at the rules that make them have to eat from your household and only work 14-hour days? Then you need our product. A slave! Slaves are free, strong, do not need to be fed and can work all day and night long. They're not even considered human, so you can whip them if they don't do what you say. With just 100 free slaves, you can start up your own cotton plantation and instantly become rich. They're economically friendly as you don't even need to clothe them. Everyone has them. You don't want to be left behind in this incredible economic booster. And for the first 50 callers, we'll give you a second free slave for the first 10 that die. You don't even have to pay shipping costs. So, what are you doing? Call the number on the screen now while stocks last. Warning, 50% of slaves will die during the long, cold journey across the Atlantic.
Today, our special guest, Thomas Clarkson. He was born March 28, 1760 in Welsh Bay, Cambridgeshire. He worked for years trying to put an end to slavery and the slave trade.
Thank you very much for having me here today.
So, Mr. Clarkson, why don't you tell us why you got so interested in the slave trade?
Well, you see, it all started when I was 25. I was studying at Cambridge University and was writing an essay for a competition. It was called, "Is it lawful to make slaves of others against their will?" As I researched, I began to realise the horrors that people suffered from the slave trade. I was so shocked by what I discovered about how enslaved Africans were treated.
So what did you do after you learnt about the slave trade?
I continued my research and travelled to London, encountered others who wanted to stop the slave trade. I published my essay in June 1786. It was read by lots of people and I quickly became a well-known figure.
How interesting. I've heard that you set up a committee. Is that true?
Yes, in May 1787, I and 11 other men set up the Committee for the Abolition of the Trade Slave. The slave trade.
Oh, yes. So how do you help to stop the slave trade?
Oh, well, I spent a large amount of my time collecting information about the slave trade. I prepared pamphlets to raise the public's attention and created a lot of support for our cause to abolish slave trade. In 1807, after years of work and dedication by a lot of people, Great Britain finally passed a bill which prohibited the importation of slaves.
What other achievements did you accomplish in your life?
Throughout my life, I continued to work to put an end to slavery across the world. And in 1823, I joined a campaign for the end of slavery everywhere. I served as the vice president along with William Wilberforce in the Anti-Slavery Society. 10 years later, after the United Kingdom created the Slavery Abolition Act and slavery was successfully destroyed in the United Kingdom. I am so proud to have been a part of destroying slavery.
Thanks so much for your time, Thomas.
You're a truly inspirational figure. You contributed greatly to stopping the slave trade and were an influential figure against slavery and the slave trade in Great Britain.
It was my pleasure.
Back to you, Madonna.
Thank you for watching Back in Time. See us next week at 7 o'clock. Stop it!